Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully, everybody had a great break, great lunch. Um, Joining me for this talk today is good friend and legendary artist Mike Winkelmann, Beeple. Um, Mike, do we have you on?
Hey, hey, can
Oh
you
my
hear
God, I hear
me?
you. I hear you. There you are, life size. We had Ari on. Literally, yeah, it's amazing. We got two 30-inch, 30-foot screens here. How are you, sir? Good.
We're doing good. We're doing good. How's the day going?
Amazing. It's been an amazing day. We had some great talks. You know, one of the things that I wanted to sort of cover, even at the top of this, is, I mean, there's such a deep amount of change and some angst, some opportunity around AI. The last time that you and I were doing one of these talks, we had a mod on there, was talking about the tools. Like, I mean, I think that, one of the points I was making was that, there's, before people worry about what AI takes away from their opportunities, there's so many new things you can do. It's just like with Octane, giving people the ability to do cheap 3D rendering, but still giving a vast opportunity. And I think we're using Kriya, Magnifique, other things. And I guess I'd like to start with just what AI tools are you using? How do you see it playing out? What's your take on it? Has it evolved since the last time we caught up a few months back?
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. Very much appreciate it, and excited to be a part of this. Yeah, I think the tools really, to me, have just are progressing so fast that
Yeah.
it's so hard to keep up with it. I've used quite a lot of different sort of tools throughout the last few years here, from a bunch of stuff with sort of stable diffusion and comfy UI workflows, to a bunch of the different video generators now with Kling and Luma and
Yeah.
Pika and
Have you tried
Minimax
Higgsfield?
and all those things. What's up?
Have you tried Higgsfield, the one that's been out a couple of
I
weeks?
just tried
It's
Higgsfield,
pretty
yeah,
good.
with all the like crazy camera movements and
Yeah.
stuff, and like, yeah, it's insane how many of them there are and how fast they're progressing. And obviously, the new 4.0 image update is
Yep.
just insane. And so, to me, I just see these as all having a massive, massive amount of opportunities. And I think especially combined with understanding of 3D workflows, there's just so many things that you could do now, and it just feels like such an exciting time to be able to be creating things with just you know ideas that you can sort of flesh out in an afternoon that would have just taken like
Yeah.
months before. To me is such a exciting, inspiring time.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I've been also, I use all the tools, everything that comes out. That's why I was, mentioning the Higgsfield one. But it's also one of the things that you didn't see the talk from earlier today. But we're working on bringing it so that if you generate something and you bring it into Octane and you can, do stuff with it, that's a really powerful system as well. I mean, if you can mix generative art with a control, like I'm sure if you're experiencing what I'm experiencing as showing this, like you can launch something through like Kriya, for example, on 20 of these different video generators, and you'll get back these results. And it's still a lottery, right, with a lot of the generative AI tools. And I want to figure out a way to make it so that it's as specific and deterministic as what we get in 3D or our existing rendering pipelines. But and I think that that's kind of where things might be heading. But I mean, again, when you're using these generative video models, like what's your return rate on success, or how many times do you iterate, or what have you learned as an artist, even through prompting?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it definitely, that's the part of it that I think is sometimes frustrating, and I think it really almost requires a new way of sort of like thinking about where you're kind of like going with it. Because yeah, the return rate on them, it's getting better
Yeah.
as they become better at sort of like understanding language, but it's still sometimes can be very frustrating when you're like, give it super specific direction, and it's like, no, 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 and doesn't keep doing it. And that's where I think having, being able to really sort of feed in precise videos and sort of like camera moves and different
Yep.
things with Cinema 4D and Octane, I think really helps give you a much higher degree of control. But yeah, it's definitely, not where I would like to see it be. But I think there again, it almost, I was talking to somebody yesterday who was uses this for sort of like client work, and they were talking about how we almost need to sort of like think a bit different
Yeah.
about how you sort of like approach what you're looking for, what you're trying to get out of it, because it doesn't have super precise controls yet, but it has the ability to make a lot of things. And
Right.
sometimes that's actually like having a bit looser idea of what you're sort of like going after. I think in the end can let you be open to sort of like happy accidents and like detours that you wouldn't normally do, and sort of like looking at that and sort of readjusting your expectations or readjusting how you're sort of like creating, I think can help you use these tools in a way that speaks to their strengths rather than their sort of like drawbacks at the moment.
Yeah. I look at it the same way as well. And, it's funny, just before this talk, a couple came up to me and said, our son is learning 3D and, is in the VFX space, but wants to learn how to, do AI, the AI tools. What school? And I'm like, I think you just have to go online. I think this is weekly, daily, this changes. And that's the thing is that, everybody's sort of in the same boat. If you want to use this stuff, it's not like there's a course book or curriculum on there, and that's in some ways a good thing. It's changing a lot, and there's a lot of opportunity to do stuff with it. I do think part of my goal is to try to get that kind of to change the lottery system a bit so that you can get much more precision. But even in the state things are at now, it could be useful if you again think about it and it's in a different way. And I think the other thing as an artist, you were talking about in our last conversation was, the Beeple style, like people's art being taken and applied in training and all that stuff. Obviously with render, we want to try to fix that. If you create something on the network, there's a tag for that. We can look at tracking it, but maybe the thing is more just the fear that artists have around their work being trained and so on. And you're like, I don't care if people take my stuff and remix it. Has your thinking on that evolved? Is it the same? What would you say to artists that are, fearful of that outcome? Do you
Yeah,
think it's
I
overblown? I
think
know,
that's
but
I think it's very overblown. That it's like, if I hate to say it, if
say it
every artist
unfiltered.
who is
That's what
concerned
that's what we're here
about
for.
that removed their work from the training data, nothing would change.
Yeah,
Like it just wouldn't change. Like it's being trained on such an immensely vast amount of work that even if you removed your 7 JPEGs that it was trained on, there's like 10 billion other ones that are so similar to that it's not going to make a difference. And so I think sort of worrying about that, I don't think that's going to put food on the table.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So it's like it's one of these things where it's like you can get super butthurt about that, but
yeah.
it's
And
not really going to help your present day sort of like situation.
yeah, I agree that the scale at which things are at, and also, I was making, Matt had sort of made this point to me earlier, and it's true. All these things like the Kling they're training it in China, and in China and Singapore, there's no laws protecting IP. You can train in all the Marvel movies. That's in Kling. So and that is out there. People are just building stuff on there, and it's like, and even Adobe when they tried to do their clean video thing, well, they're using stuff from Midjourney, which is generated out of dirty data. So it's Cameron was playing the clip, you have to worry on the output. The training data is at this point, it's like that. That thing's sort of left the stable. But I do think, to your point about putting food on the table, obviously there's a lot of artists that could type something in now and get back something and maybe get work or not, or maybe that's just how do you see artists that are struggling to get in this business that used to maybe do MoGraph stuff or concept work? What's the opportunity and the peril or the changes that are happening with these tools being so pervasive? And how would you tell an artist that's starting today like what to do, how to think about this, and where to begin?
Sure, I think they need to familiarize themselves with the tools because, like you said, it's very pervasive, and I think it's going to get more and more powerful, and it's going to become less tenable to, sort of build out an entire 3D pipeline for a lot of different things, because it's really like that becomes, you know, a massive, massive amount of work. And I think there's also, it doesn't really need to be a like, you could really take a hybrid approach with these tools. And one of the things that I do, fairly often in the everydays now, is I will generate an image and I'll say, here's this image that I'm looking for. I would like it on a white background, and it's some sort of like object. And then I'll take that object, I'll generate it in Creo with like Flux or something like that. Then I'll take that object and I'll take it into Tripo and
Yep.
I'll make a 3D model of it,
Yep.
and then I will bring that 3D model into Octane, render a scene around it. Then I will take that render and final render and take it into Magnific. And so I've used three different types of AI, but I have very, very precise control over what the sort of like output is. And I'm just using it as a, again, a tool where I'm not just like, roll the dice. Okay, I typed in 20 words. We'll see what happens. Hit, reroll, reroll, reroll. Like, and so I think looking at, not just the driving rate to the final end input, but how
Yep.
can you use tools that, that give you more granular control throughout the workflow? And I think that's what you're going to see more of in people building sort of like pipelines out. I think there will be sometimes they'll go right to the like generate me the video, but I think understanding where they're at and sort of trying to figure out how you can work as fast as possible, because at the end of the day, the clients, I promise you, give no fuck how you created this shit. They
Yep.
do not care. They're like, how can this be as cheap as possible? That's it. And I think the idea, just going back to again the idea of sort of like, well, this is trained on XYZ thing, and I don't like how it's trained. If there are no open source sort of like models, the option is that only the tech companies who have massive amounts of money to buy huge swaths of images,
Yep.
they control the entire thing. And so it's sort of like, that doesn't seem better. Like,
Yep.
I think having open source models that anybody can use to have, a alternative to just playing in the giant tech company sandbox, to me actually seems the most fair.
Yeah, and I want to hone down on a point you were making about your workflow, because I was showing in my presentation, the part where you get your precision is Tripo. And I was showing you in my slides earlier, going to Korea, taking 2 images, right, sending it to Tripo, and getting back a mesh that was usable in Octane. Didn't even know you were, I mean, I suspected that, so if you're doing, sure, that changes the game. And I think that one of the things that we're working on that I was showing is that, well, if you can generate into the mesh and not have to go through Tripo and not, in one step in the tool, that would be a big deal. And I think that's sort of where, you're reinforcing, I think, a point I was thinking myself about, is that that's where these things converge in a really powerful way, where we're going to be doing whole new stuff. And you're right. I mean, it's like when you're trying to do something, every day is right. The timeline of being able to just iterate, versus like modeling something which is tedious or building, that's really powerful. And I do think that, your point about the stuff, the training, is like, we're so beyond that as well in these things. I think it's much more about the artist to get work when there's AI. It's like, does the client not need the artist anymore, which is always a fear that, well, they're just going to type it in and get the thing they want. But my thing is, there's still there's an artistry to using these tools. Just like everyone has a phone doesn't mean they're Cameron, and it's like that. So it's good to hear about your workflow, and also a lot of people look up to because of how you sort of change the game with Everydays, and of course with the whole NFT space. You want to talk a little bit about Beeple Studios and the physical pieces you're doing and how that's going. I think that would be a great thing to just update the audience on.
Sure, sure. Yeah, just to go back to what you just said, I think that is a great analogy with the sort of like camera. Again,
Yeah.
every single person has the
Yep.
camera, and it's actually even easier than AI. You just press a button and it's like
Yeah.
boom, there's the image of whatever. Yet we still hire photographers because I don't know about you, but I suck at taking pictures
Yeah.
with this thing. I suck at taking video. It doesn't turn out good. It doesn't look good. And so I think, will the client be able to generate something? Sure. But are
Right.
they going to look at it and like probably have a bit higher expectation and realize that what they generated is not that good? I honestly think so. And I think it's really going to just change, like, our expectations are going to change. Whereas you might have done one, 30-second commercial and it took you 3 months, you're going to do a 30-second commercial and it's going to take you 3 days.
Yep.
And so you're just going to do like 30 of them. And, it's just going to change in terms of like how much output each person does. But it's still going to take somebody who is very good at these tools to do it, because I think there's this, like, who people who are not familiar with the tools just have a gross misconception that it's like AI did this. And it's
Yeah.
like, I would love to see that tool where AI just magically does something that's actually interesting, because I think AI has really raised the bar in terms of creativity,
Yep.
that you have to make something that's super interesting and super new and novel. Just having, shiny whatever is kind of like, you see that now and you're like, it's fine. Like it doesn't
True.
matter. Yeah. And so in terms of, how we're using it in the studio here, we're using it on a number of the sort of like sculptures like Human One, but really trying to embed it into the sculpture in a way where, it's a necessary part of the artwork that couldn't exist without it. And I think you're going to see more art that sort of utilizes AI in that way, and more different things that utilize AI in a way that they're not just a shortcut to get to the end point faster. They give you an ability to make something you just fundamentally could not have made otherwise.
Right.
And I think, to me, those are the most interesting use cases for AI, not just, speeding up things, but making things we couldn't
Yep.
have made without it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's sort of been my experience as well. Is that it's interesting where there's something that just feels like it would have been impossible to do unless you had a little piece of generative, like a node or something. And that is definitely really interesting possibility. And but I am curious also, on the physical art side of things, and even with the studios that you started, which is amazing. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that for a little bit. I mean, I keep seeing that the events you're having. I mean, let's sort of touch on that a bit and just tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing at Beeple Studios. And I think it's just great stuff, and I want to definitely spread the love a little bit around that.
Sure, sure. So the studio, that's where I am right now. We've got a 50,000 square foot studio in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
And this is where the physical artworks are made. And they're, if you've not seen them, you Google sort of Human One is the most kind of like popular one. But they're, sort of bigger physical sculptures that have a bunch of computers and GPUs and
Yeah.
stuff in them, and they are really trying to be this mix of sort of the physical and digital world, where that I think, obviously with the NFTs, there's a lot of
Yeah.
people in many cases, rightfully so, called bullshit on the whole thing,
Yeah.
which I totally get. Um, and so I'm trying to make work that is kind of, undeniable to people who are, come from maybe more of a traditional background. And it's harder for them to see work that's purely digital in the same sort of, kind of canon of art history that they would look at a painting or a sculpture or something like that. And so those works are made in the studio here. And the other thing that we do is we have a bunch of different events where we're trying to bring people together in a immersive space here where we've got wraparound sort of like projectors and columns with TVs on them, and really try out a bunch of different kind of experimental ideas around how you could use a space like this. We just did a event that focused on kind of the intersection of art and gaming, where we had a bunch of sort of video game tournaments, and we had a bunch of people sort of like competing with kind of drawing tournaments and sort of creating art live. And before that, we had like an election night watch party where we had a bunch of different news feeds and a marching band and hot dog eating contest, and just really sort of like trying to play with ideas about uh, kind of pointing to what I think museums will sort of evolve to in the
Yeah.
future when they all have a very digital immersive space.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what's crazy about your journey is that, I mean, I think the whole thing with the NFT thing is that it just gave people, and your success, that blew it up, is that it gave people an understanding that value could be applied to non-physical things, and that artistically means something more so than the money and the NFT part of it. But I think that there was a magical part where so many artists that are on Render and we're making good money on it, and it's like I think it just went to memification and then garbage for a lot of things. But you're touching on the NFT. What do you see the space being? Is it just memes? Is there something still there that can be done with this, or do we just build a better version of this, which is still something we could do? Because there's a lot of options. But how do you see the NFT space today?
I think it's going to take. I think it's just um, what happened was always going to happen, and sort of a lot of the things that had no artistic merit or no sort of like lasting cultural relevance that was not based on pure speculation, we're just of course going to kind of just wash
Yeah.
away into the ether over time. And I think memes are a big part. I think memes are going to be very sort of like popular, and I think people think of them in a kind of sort of limited sense. But I think the idea of, if you strip away sort of the kind of um, context around them, or the sort of like connotation that they have, the idea of the concept of ideas spreading very fast, I think is going to be a big part of art, and I think it's going to be a big part of sort of like society, as the communication channels allow for ideas to spread faster and faster. And so I think I don't necessarily think that memes are a bad thing. I just think it's going to take um, longer for there to be more sort of like mainstream acceptance around this medium. But I think it's hard for me to imagine us living less digital lives
Yeah.
in the future. And so, again, the idea that digital and virtual objects can have value, I don't see that sort of like going away. I think it's just going to take time for people to accept that, and it really is um, at the end of the day, it's whatever has attention and sort of like cultural relevance that has value. And
Yeah.
whether that's a physical thing or whether that's a digital idea, you know, it's it's not going to matter in the future. And I think our kids growing up with iPads and video games and Fortnite skins and stuff, I mean,
Yeah.
this is going to be completely second nature to them, that certain virtual objects have value. And if a lot of people care about and are touched by those virtual objects, then they will have an immense value. And that's really all it is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, that's a big, that's why I sort of wanted to touch on it. And I think that, yeah, there's a little bit of, again, when things become fads or they're speculative, I mean, that almost hurts the more interesting part of the message. And I think with AI tools as well. I mean, there is this thing where anybody can do something, but I guess I'm seeing interesting things, and I don't know which Instagram or X, whatever. But you do see the spread of these things really quickly. I mean, you can iterate quickly, and AI can put something out there, instant feedback, right, and instant notification. But when you're doing your everydays now, like what's changed? Anything changed for you, and just what brings you or inspires you to do them? I mean, we talked a little bit about the tech, but what about just as an artist? What goes into them today versus 2 years ago? I mean, anything there that's evolved as you have, I guess. Just
Yeah, I think obviously the things going on in the world right now, there's no shortage of inspiration, and there's no shortage of, now that we got your boy Donnie back, we got all kinds of crazy crap happening on a daily basis. And so it's it's plenty of crazy dumb shit to pull from in terms of inspiration. And so that's of course a huge piece of it. But I think also chronicling the sort of internet culture at large and the things that happen and exist on the internet, to me, I think is interesting, and sort of like cataloging them through this sort of filter of um, weirdness and I don't know, just bizarre, forward-looking sort of sci-fi humorous filter. I think to me is still really exciting, and continues to be fresh, because whatever craziness the internet sort of like pulls out continues to be fresh. And I think the other thing that's actually very interesting about them now too, in terms of like AI, and not so much on the workflow side, but on kind of the like context and meaning side,
yeah,
is I don't know how many people have tried it, but on Twitter, that grok thing,
yeah.
if you ask it to explain the everydays now, many times it's very, very good. Like, it's surprisingly good at being able to sort of explain things that sometimes are very sort of like esoteric and very sort of in the weeds of if you missed whatever people were talking about that day, you're not going to understand it all. And so to me, I think that's actually really exciting, because these sort of like brief moments in time, it won't be like, oh, what the hell does this even mean, 20 years in the future or whatever. Like, the AI will know exactly what
Yeah.
that meant and why I sort of like, it might not understand all my sort of like reasoning, obviously, but it will certainly be able to like provide some context into these very sort of like, ephemeral, points in time that I'm kind of like drawing from.
That's a great point. I have tried Grok, and Grok for me, the interesting part is, I'm on the X, whatever, Twitter, and yeah, there's something I'm like, what is this about? And I hit Grok, and it answers. And the thing is, whether it's better or worse than any of the others, that insight's interesting. And I'm with you. Like, I've always been interested in seeing how good the AI is at understanding what the intention of the picture is. And yeah, I didn't even think of trying your everydays on it, but the fact that it is sort of getting better at it is fascinating.
It's
Um,
definitely getting better.
yeah. No, I mean, and the space is moving fast. I mean, it's like all the things from the generative side, from the AI to sort of assist in explaining or adding information to something that's already human generated is fascinating as well. And maybe there is an artistic thing there to consider down the line. But the thing with Rock being so integrated in social media and working better, I think, than Meta's thing is I've noted that as well. So that's definitely. Are you finding engagement-wise? I mean, do you find X, Instagram? What is it that you feel gets the most interesting feedback for you on your posts and what you're doing out of all of them? I mean,
Well,
yeah.
let's just say I'm in a naughty timeout in on Instagram right now, because I was bullying Joe Bidden,
Oh, geez.
and
I didn't
so I
even
got put in the
penalty box.
naughty boys
Oh
shadow
no.
ban time there. And so yeah, I don't super love that, but it's very tough because the audiences on both, X, Twitter, whatever, and Instagram are quite different.
Yeah.
X with sort of like crypto Twitter tends to be more sort of like conservative and sort of like pro-Trump. So anytime I make fun of Trump there, I'm a fucking libtard, blah, blah, blah. And anytime Instagram, I make fun of, Joe Biden, I just get my account freaking shut down for, 2 weeks because it
There's nothing in the middle.
made the little Toy Boys wah wah. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of stuck in the middle there. So
If it were only decentralized and permissionless, and that's how it worked, we wouldn't have to pick a side, and maybe that's where the blockchain has a value in there. And I know people have been trying that for a while, but dude, it's so great to catch up. I think we're just about out of time, but I love having your insights, and I think everybody here in the audience that's been listening to this, it's been great. Yeah, Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
yeah, thank you so much. Very
Thank
much
you.
appreciate the opportunity.
People,
and
everyone.
really wish I could have made it out there to hang with all the homies. So yeah,
Thanks,
you guys.
Mike.
I appreciate it.
Take care.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Oh, you're still there, but I think we're good. Thank you, everyone. That was great. I'll join you guys on a future panel. I think we have another one starting shortly. Thanks.